Good evening, folks, and welcome to another Monday night edition of the People Show here on May the 13th. We are in the aftermath of the corporate celebration of Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers who are still with us, and certainly a heavenly happy Mother's Day to all of those who are resting in the arms of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. They have earned their wings into the heavens. And certainly a good evening to the rest of you all, and thank you for joining me for another edition of The People Show on intellectualradio.com, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning into the broadcast. And I asked that if you would like and you would share the broadcast with your social media outlets and ask them to join us for this edition of The People Show, as we are going to get into a discussion about things that are continuously happening. And you heard me, if you saw the promo that I put out earlier today about the two fatal shootings of two black men down in Florida. I am a native of Miami, Florida, and one of the shootings happened in the North Miami area of Florida called Model City, which is near the Overtown area, of a gentleman by the name of Donald Armstrong, 47 years old, who was fatally shot on March the 7th. And of course, Roger Fortson, who was shot and killed on May the 3rd. And so we're going to be talking about that. I did reach out to we tried to see if we could get Attorney Ben Crump to come on with us. We were unsuccessful at being able to get him, but we are going to still continue to try to see if we can get him to come on. Of course, we were trying to reach him about this, and it was, the last minute trying to reach out to him. But we're certainly going to continue to do that. So let's get right into what we're going to be talking about. We're also going to be talking about some other things that, of course, I want to continue to encourage us of organizing so that we can deal with issues of the social political dynamics of the social economic conditions for the Black diaspora and the Black communities. It is vitally important that we do that. We're going to do that maybe if we get to it in the second hour. So let's jump right into this. Of course, the killing of a Black U.S. Air Force senior airman by a Florida sheriff's deputy responding to a phoned-in complaint about an argument, has an airman's family calling for an investigation and charges, and of course saying that the shooting was completely unjustified. On the afternoon of May the 3rd, Roger Fortson opened the door of his Florida apartment with a gun in his hand and was immediately shot 6 times by a sheriff deputy responding to a complaint about an argument. I'm going to play this clip. Take a look. Take a listen.
Sheriff's office, open the door!
Seconds later, Fortson opens the door.
Step out.
He's seen holding a handgun that was legally owned, according to his family. The deputy orders him to step back, then fires.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
It's over there.
Drop the gun!
I don't have it.
312, shots fired. Suspect down.
Okaloosa Sheriff Eric Aiden says his department released the video to be transparent.
No determination has been made as to whether the deputy's actions were justified or not.
Fortson's mother, Mika, says her son was FaceTiming with his girlfriend during the shooting. The girlfriend told the family the deputy said something not on the body cam video released today.
They just said, oh yeah, he shot up. He shot up. My baby was shot up.
Fortson's family says he was alone and grabbed his gun only after he heard aggressive knocking on his door, peeked through his peephole and saw no one. Fortson's family claims the deputy went to the wrong apartment.
Roger was a gift from God.
He was a patriot, and so he respected authority. Why the police didn't respect him? That's the question.
Now, there are other videos, and we're going to be doing, I'm sure, several follow-ups to this, but there are other videos that show the sheriff of Okaloosa County that he was standing to the right of the door and to the left of the door where Roger Fortson, the 23-year-old airman, could not see him. Now, this is the state of Florida, where the governor of the state of Florida signed a policy into law that you do not need to have a concealed license card. You don't have to have any type of registration to carry lawfully a firearm in the state of Florida. Now, this is not something that I think that is beneficial to Black men in particular, or women for that matter. Now, full disclaimer, full disclosure, I am not a gun proponent. I don't believe in guns. I've never owned one and never will own one. So, and all of the statistics points to, the more guns, the more unsafe it is for our community. And so I am not a proponent. And I'm going to go through the statistics up to date where we are in terms of gun-related deaths in the United States of America on this day, May the 13th of 2024. Now, in the state of Florida, you have a 23-year-old who is in the military, serving his country, doing good things, doing good, positioned, ready to defend our freedoms and to defend our Constitution, to defend the shores of the United States of America. He's willing to give his life. That's what you sign up for in the military. He is making that commitment to serving in the United States military. Now, in the state of Florida, where you have a law-abiding citizen who is doing what he's supposed to be doing, where you have all of these Second Amendment rights advocates who claim that there are those like me and others who want to take away their right to protect themselves, their family, and their property. And here is a 23-year-old Black man who is in his home, someone aggressively knocking on his door. He has no expectations for anybody to be knocking on his door. He's not having a domestic altercation with anyone. He's in his off-base apartment on FaceTime with his girlfriend. So there is no domestic dispute. There's no domestic anything happening at his apartment. But someone phoned in and said that there was some sort of domestic disturbance going on somewhere in the complex. I'm not even saying that there weren't. I don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that here is, and even if it were coming from that apartment, even if it were, which it was not, here is a 23-year-old black man who is lawfully under the guise of the Second Amendment, who has the right to bear arms in his home to protect his property, is what he was doing. Someone bamming on the door, as we say, knocking aggressively on the door, and then screaming and standing to the side. And I don't have those videos, but I'm going to get those videos to show you that this person stood to one side of the door and then stood to the other side of the door. He was not standing directly in front and view of Roger Fortson for him to know that he was a Okaloosa County sheriff. Somebody knocking on your door, somebody aggressively knocking on your door. If somebody aggressively knocks on my door, I don't have a gun, but certainly I am going to be weary or caution of who that is, even if it's a family member knocking aggressively on my door. So it happens 3 different times that the officer knocks on the door and steps to the side. He steps to one side, knocks on the door, and yells, "Open the door," steps to the other side. He doesn't know if it's a police officer. He doesn't know if it's some person who is trying to inflict harm. He has no idea who this is that is knocking aggressively at his door. So he goes and exercises his Second Amendment rights to go and get his lawfully, legally owned firearm in his home, to come to his front door to see who it is that is aggressively at his door. When the person from the county, from the sheriff's office, then he recognizes or sees this person, he opens the door and he has the gun, and the gun is not even, if you see the gun, he doesn't have his hand on the trigger. He does not have his hand on the trigger. His gun, and the gun is pointed down by his side. So he is not in a threatening position. It is down by his side. And this police officer tells him to back up and then fires 5 times into this young man's home, into his body. And then he calls and reports that the suspect is down. When was he a suspect? This is a 23-year-old airman. When did he become a suspect? The question that I have is, what is it and why is it that it is a license for police officers, in particular white police officers, to assume that they have the power, the discretion, the authority, and the right and the privilege to gun down black men at will? This is a black man who was carrying out what we understand to be his Second Amendment rights, and that is that he has a firearm to protect his home. He has a lawfully, legally owned firearm to protect his home, but yet he was not protected in his home. He was killed in his home because he was securing his home by law enforcement, who is supposed to be serving and protecting law-abiding citizens. So as a black man, a law-abiding citizen, a law-abiding black man, you still are not safe from being murdered, from being killed by law enforcement, even when you're doing everything within the law, when you're doing everything right. Now, I'm not making a judgment that they're going to find that this was justified, but I've been reading all of the reports, and this is an article from ABC News, and it talks about the Fortson supporter point to the deputy's rapid decision to open fire and his mere presence at the apartment, where the Air Force senior airman was apparently alone and FaceTiming with his girlfriend as proof that it was blatantly unjustified killing, and the latest tragedy involving a black American being shot at home by law enforcement. Authorities, meanwhile, have seized on Fortson's holding a gun when he answered the door to cast the shooting as a clear-cut case of self-defense for a deputy confronted with a split-second life or death decision. Now, you know, that's always the go-to when a police officer shoots and kills someone. It is always the go-to, whether they had a gun, whether they didn't have a gun. I was in fear of my life. I saw a shiny object. It was not a split-second decision when this person did not have the firearm and was not pointing the firearm in any aggressive way towards a police officer. He was in his home. He was acting on his Second Amendment rights. So apparently the Second Amendment can be compromised even when you're in your own home, according to the Second Amendment and according to the interpretation of the Second Amendment, that if you're a legally, lawfully gun owner that you have in your home to protect your home, and when you use that weapon and you bring that weapon as a point of security, or certainly to be protecting your home, and you bring it to the door, and because it's a police officer, they can gun you down inside your own home because they say that it was a split-second decision. It wasn't a split-second decision because the sheriff asked for him to back up. And as he backed up, he started firing. So, of course, there are going to be those who are going to take that position. But here's my question. And maybe the question will be somewhat of a rhetorical question, because they will make excuses, they will obfuscate, they will lie to justify their position. But my question is, why is it that when Black people see the exact same video with a different name, and white people see the same video? Now, believe me, I'm from Florida. I understand the dynamics of race in Florida, and it's not good, and it hasn't gotten any better, despite what some would think. Born and raised in Florida, been around Florida, understand the racial dynamics in many sectors. Now, this is not to paint a picture, a broad paintbrush on everybody who is white. That's not what I'm doing here, but I certainly understand the problems of race relations in the state of Florida between Black people and white people. But why is it that they see something different? How is this that you see something different? This one in particular, where a Black man was doing everything right according to the Constitution and according to the law. He did everything that he was supposed to do and that he was allowed to do under the confines of the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and the law. The law says that you can hold and you can own legally a firearm to protect yourself, to protect your property, and to protect your home. That's what all of the Second Amendment advocates talk about. Where is the NRA? Why is the NRA deadly silenced? Why is their voice not being heard as it relates to Airman Roger Fortson, who is a legal gun owner, an airman in the Air Force? Why is it that their voice is a deafening silence? Why are they not saying something to defend airman, Air Force airman, Roger Fortson, a 23-year-old senior airman? Why do we not hear from the NRA, the National Rifle Association? Where are they? Where is their voice on behalf of a person who was protecting their home, who heard some aggressiveness at his front door, went to the door, didn't see anybody, then went back, grabbed his pistol, came back to the door. When he saw the sheriff, if he saw the sheriff, because the sheriff was standing to the left of the people. He was not standing directly in front. You can see that based on his body cam. But the question here is not about guns, not about guns, but let's keep it in the context of the law, where the law says that Air Force Airman Roger Fortson could legally own a concealed weapon and could legally own a firearm in his home to protect his home according to the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. And he was at home in his apartment, someone knocking at his door. He grabs his pistol, goes to the door to see if he could see who it was, to check it out, opens the door, and the sheriff tells him to step back and starts firing immediately. What this tells me is that if someone calls the police to your home and the police come to your home unexpectedly by you, knocks on the door, aggressively knocking on your door, you're completely unaware that the police is coming to your home. You go, you get your weapon, you go get your security, your gun that the law said that you could have to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your home. And you get your weapon to go check out what this aggressive knocking or banging at your door is, and you can't see them. And you want to be prepared in case there's somebody who is trying to break into your property. Someone who is trying to bring harm to you. You go and get your lawfully, legally owned weapon. And you do what anybody else would do, is to go and check out what's going on. You then open your door and a police officer guns you down. And to some, they're trying to suggest that it's justified. Based on what the sheriff said in his press conference, he's trying to suggest that it was justified. How in the world is there any question in anybody's mind, including the authorities, that this sheriff who went to that apartment, regardless of, forget about being, whether it was, that's not even in my analysis of this situation. You're banging on someone's door. That person grabs their weapon that they have at home to protect their home, to protect themselves, to go check it out. And that person gets shot down because they opened the door with the firearm in their fingers, not on the trigger, on the handle. If you look at the video, his fingers are on the firearm. But even if it were on the trigger, he's in his own apartment, legally, in his home, legally carrying his own firearm to protect his property, to protect himself, to protect his home. I mean, that's what you all say the Second Amendment says, that he has a right to do. The NRA says the same thing. Where's the NRA? Why aren't they saying something about this? Why aren't they defending the Second Amendment of Roger Fortson in his home, protecting his home with his lawfully, legally owned firearm? Why is he not being defended by the NRA? Please call the NRA and find out. I will call the NRA and try to get someone to come on. I will do a special podcast if I can get a member of the NRA to come on to answer questions as to why they are not out front defending Roger Fortson for doing what the Second Amendment and what all of the advocates and proponents of the Second Amendment and lawfully owners of guns to protect their homes, because that's what he was doing. He was at home, wasn't carrying a gun, walking around. He was at home. Somebody came to his residence, knocking aggressively on his apartment that he pays for. And he goes to grab his shield of protection that the Second Amendment says that I can lawfully own and utilize in my home to protect my home. Where is his right and his ground? He didn't get the opportunity to stand his ground. His right to stand his ground was taken away from him by the Okaloosa County Sheriff. Now, let me explain to you. This was in Fort Walton Beach. Fort Walton Beach is in the northern part of Florida, towards the central part of Florida. The population in the state of Florida is somewhere between 11 and 12%. And in many of those central northern areas of Florida, you still have the blatant racism that has been there for more than 100 years since its inception in many of those places. But that aside, I want to understand, because we're talking about the Constitution of the United States of America. The Constitution. All right. Let me just say hello to those of you who have just come on in. Mildred Branks, Earl Winfrey, thank you all for tuning in. Of course, Earl is our executive owner and president of intellectualradio.com, who gives us the opportunity to be here to do this work that we're doing and to have a platform. So I want to say hello to Brother Earl Winfrey and to his lovely wife, Wanda B. And Mildred Banks. How you doing? Good evening to you, Brother Hassan Alameen. I thought about you earlier today. Good to see you. And I believe, I don't want to say this right, but it is Kido or Kida Vanel Empress Bryce. I hope that I said it correctly. However, the idea. Oh, and let me just say to you, it's going to be coming soon that we're going to get our phone network set up where you will be able to call in to the program, and you will be able to share and express your views. Right now, we ask that you put them in the chat, and of course, we will read your comments in the chat. So Brother Earl says, I wonder if he saw black first, then the gun. Well, Brother Earl, I'm sure he did see black first. And I'm sure that that contributed to his decision to fire. I strongly believe that because I saw something on social media, and I don't know what town it was in. Somebody had posted it on Instagram or TikTok, one of those, where there was a white man brandishing a gun, walking back and forth outside of the neighborhood, and even brandished and pointed the gun, and the police officers, multiple police officers, never fired a shot. Never fired a shot. So when they see black, it is a license to shoot. It is a license to kill. Because when you're black, it is justifiable to unjustly murder black men and women. Because disproportionately black men die unarmed, lawfully abiding black men die at the guns of so-called lawfully law enforcement. But I'm repeating this again because the question needs to be asked. The question needs to be asked. You have, and look at the facts. He was at his home. He was minding his own business. He owns a gun. He's serving in our military, in our Air Force, a senior Air Force airman in Fort Walton Beach, who was at his apartment, in his home. Someone's knocking on his door, banging at his door aggressively. He doesn't see them because they don't identify themselves. Or if they identify themselves, they're not in plain view of a peephole that he looked out of. Went there, didn't have his weapon, didn't have his gun, went back, got his gun, came back to the door, then opened the door. As he opened the door, you could see the gun that is not in a position that he could use that gun to hold it to fire. In fact, when he was shot, the gun was thrown from his hand. And the sheriff was screaming, "Drop the gun." And he says, "I don't have it. It's over there." And then he says, "The suspect is down." I want to know, when did he become a suspect? When was he a suspect? When was he a suspect? Because that's what he said, that the suspect is down. When was he a suspect? Now, a suspect, according to the definition, is a person thought to be guilty of a crime or an offense. The police will arrest. So you are a person thought to be guilty of a crime or an offense. There was no crime that was committed. There was a disturbance that someone said that they heard coming from an apartment. There was no crime committed. So when was Roger Fortson, 23-year-old Air Force airman, when was he a suspect? When did he become a suspect? When the police, or when the Cook County sheriff, or not Cook County, but the county sheriff saw him open the door as a black man with a gun in his own home. When did he become a suspect? What crime did he commit or thought to have committed by carrying a lawfully owned gun in the state of Florida, where you don't need to have a concealed carry card? You don't need to have a Fort card. According to the policy, the law that just went into effect some time ago by Governor Ron DeSantis, that anybody can have a gun as long as you're of a certain age, you can have a gun in the state of Florida. That's the rule. That's the law. So when did he become a suspect? When you shot him down? You determined that he was a suspect after you shot him down in his own home because he was carrying a gun in his own home? That's not illegal. Even if it was not his home, in the state of Florida, you can have a gun. If you're of age, you can have a gun without any license, without any registration. You're permitted to have a gun. So when was he violating the law? I want to know the answer to those questions. I want for Ben Crump, who I'm going to still try to get to come on the program to talk about this so that we can talk about it in depth, to really understand how it is, what it is they are using to try to justify this slaughter of a 23-year-old young man in his own home with his weapon that's lawfully and legally owned, protecting his property and protecting his domicile. When did he become a suspect? And who gets to determine that he was a suspect? What evidence did the Okaloosa County Sheriff have that made him a suspect? Help me to understand that one, because I can't. I can't understand it. So, the investigators will consider these factors when deciding whether to charge the deputy in the case that also reflects the realities or the realities officers face every day in a country where millions of people carrying guns, including in Florida, one of the largest gun ownership states. Policing experts say Fortson simply holding a gun when he opened the door wasn't enough justification to use deadly force. But investigators will also have to consider that information the deputy knew when he responded and whether Fortson showed any behavioral indication that he posed a threat. They also say that proliferation of legal and illegal firearms is forcing officers throughout the country to have to decide faster than ever what constitutes a deadly threat. Wait a minute. So what you're telling me, what they're trying to hang on to here, is that the overproliferation of legal, the overproliferation of legal guns in the country, that all these people have been advocating, saying that we need more guns and people need to be able to protect themselves, even though you're 3 times more likely to die by your own gun in your own home than you are to die by someone else. In his case, he didn't die by his gun. He died at the hands of somebody else's gun who saw his gun in his home, protecting his home, and not even using it in any way, shape, or form in aggression. There was no time on the video, not a single time on the video, where he demonstrated. I'm going to play the clip again, and I want you to see. Where his hand was when the door opened. He never had a chance to put the gun up, to secure it. He never had the opportunity to do any of that, but he was legally, lawfully carrying the gun in his home, and he had a right to have it to protect his property. Take a look.
Sheriff's office, open the door.
Seconds later, Fortson opens the door.
Step out.
He's seen holding a handgun that was legally owned, according to his family. The deputy orders him to step back, then fires.
Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
It's over there.
Drop the gun!
I don't have it.
312 shots.
There was never a time. He opened the door. He stood there with his hand down the entire time. What aggression? What split second? What proliferation of... In this article, they said the proliferation of legal guns. Now, I have my opinion about guns, and I may talk about that a little bit later on, but I don't want to lose focus at all about Roger Fortson, who should be here today, that on May the 3rd was gunned down, slaughtered in his own home, doing within the law what the Constitution said that he could do to protect his home. So a black man in the state of Florida cannot even abide by the law and survive. He can't maintain the Constitution and live. So, carrying a gun as a black man is a license for a police officer to shoot you down and kill you and then characterize you as a suspect. Suspect down, he said. When was he ever a suspect? I guess in a split second, he became a suspect. In a split second, he became a victim. And the gall, the unmitigated gall for someone to suggest that this was a clear-cut case of self-defense. What aggression did Roger Fortson demonstrate? Was it aggression for him to open the door with a gun in his own home that was pointed down to the ground, never raised it, not even an 1 inch? When? It is astonishing. It is blatantly astonishing that when you do everything in your own home, you're in your own home, you're abiding by the law in your own home, and you are gunned down, abiding by the law. The only difference is that you happen to be a black man, an Air Force senior airman in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, which is in and of itself a dangerous place for any person of color. No matter what the outcome is, there seems to be because this mother is never going to get her son back. This mother will never get her son back. She will never get her son back. May 3rd was the last day, if she spoke to him on May 3rd. I don't know what the last day was that she actually saw him, but she will never, for the remainder of her life, ever hear her son's voice, hold her son, hug her son. And she didn't even get Mother's Day. This is what she got for Mother's Day. Her son slaughtered in his own home at his front door. That's what she got for Mother's Day. That's the sentence that she got by this Okaloosa County sheriff. Now, let me just say to us and say to those of you, though we're hurt, though we're angry, frustrated, what we must not do is to channel our hurt and our anger into hate. We have a lot of work to do because we won't change the hearts of people who hate, the minds of people who minimize you because you're black, We're not going to change who they are. But what we must do is to remember. I think that we did get to a point to where we somehow thought that race relations in this country had gotten better. There were people who believed that. My former co-host believed, or at least stated that they believed it, that things were much better in the country. Better for who? Better for who? I, on the other hand, contend that we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And we, in our community, we have a lot of work to do that we must do in order to change the dynamics of this behavior that many thought that had gotten better. Many thought that had gotten better, and it has not. It has not. I think that over the last 8 years, or even the last 14 years, I think that what we have seen is not a birth, but a volcano of hate that had been simmering, that had been masked, that when there were certain things that took place, that triggered the hate, the bigotry of some, that they could not mask it any longer. At the election of Barack Obama, we saw it uncovered at the election of Barack Obama. Never in the history of the presidency did you have elected officials on the day of inauguration take a vow to destroy the country, take a vow to reject any policies that would even benefit their people if it was going to give benefit to the Black president. We've seen that hate sanctioned and unleashed under the former administration of the current administration. And it continues to rear its ugly head during this campaign. So we should not be surprised. But what I don't want us to do is I don't want us to channel our hurt, our disappointment, our frustration, our downright anger into hate. We have to turn that to productive organizing so that we can deal with these issues all over this land where we live, where we are. We don't have the luxury. We don't have the luxury of individualism. We don't have that luxury of the I got mine, you get yours. We don't have that luxury because it's only getting worse. And the idea of having these more guns is the answer. I'm afraid that we need to rethink that one because I want to show you the statistics of gun-related deaths today. I got to go back and redo so that I can, so that the people on, okay, let's see here where we are. Okay, hold on a second, folks. I got to update something here. Something has happened with our stream. And so I gotta try to fix it. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to see if I can update it for us. If I can update it. Okay. I don't believe that I can do it. But if you're on Instagram, you can switch over to YouTube because the stream has ended on Instagram. But okay, so let me just go to these statistics. So as I said to you, I am not a gun proponent. I don't believe in them. I don't own one. Never held one that I know of, and don't intend to have one. I've been accosted with a gun. I've been robbed twice and threatened with a gun while I was in college back in Miami. Been robbed twice here in Chicago. But thanks be to Almighty God, I'm here to still talk with you, that I was not hurt or harmed, or the people who were with me on one of those incidents were not harmed. So one of those incidents was right after Bible study at my church in the parking lot. And there were 3 or 4 other people who were with me, and person who accosted us and robbed us with a gun, and nobody was hurt. The second time, in 2014, that I was robbed. But I am still here, and I still don't believe in guns. And I believe the fewer guns that we have, the better off we would be. But let me just give you some statistic. This comes from the Gun Violence Archive of the research, which is published on a daily basis. And this gives us all of the data of gun-related deaths in the country. So this is of May the 13th, of homicide, murder, unintentional deaths. gun-related deaths. There have been 5,969 homicide, murders, unintentional deaths in this country as of May 13th, and it is now 8:05 Central Standard Time. 5,969. Total number of injuries, 10,943. Total number of mass shootings, 157. Total number of mass murders, 11. Total number of children from 0 to age 11 killed, 83. Injured, 198. Number of teens ages 12 to 17 killed, 425. Injured, 1,130. Officer involved incidents killed, 30. Officer killed or injured, 141. Officer involved incident, 530. Suspect killed or injured, 303. Defensive use, 468. Unintentional shootings, 501. Murder, suicide incidents, 243. Now, there is a statistic that has been left out. Let's see. There that left out here. Let's see. I'm trying to. Okay. All right, I have to get those. I have to get those updated numbers. All right. So, but those are the numbers that are reported by the gun violence archives. Now, we are 4% of the world's population. 4% of the world's population of about 8 billion people. 4%. In this country, we have 40% of the world's guns are owned by 39% of the people of this country. 4% of the world's population has 40% of the world's guns owned by 39% of the population of the United States of America. We have more homicides, we have more sexual assaults, we have more burglaries, we have more robberies, we have more deaths, gun-related deaths, we have more suicides, we have more murders than any other developed nation in the country. But yet, we have 40% of the world's guns owned by 39% of the 4% of the world's population. That's where we are. That's where we are. And I believe that this idea of filling people's minds with the fear that somehow that we are going to have to stand against the government is reckless, and it's a form of suicide because of the things that are happening, like what happened with Roger Fortson. And I haven't even gotten to Donald Armstrong, which you're going to hear about. Donald Armstrong was gunned down, not dead, but was shot on March the 7th. And we're going to hear about Donald Armstrong, another black man in Miami, Florida, where there were 7 police officers present. His mother had called because he was having some episodes, because she said that he was having some problems. So she called the police. So the report is that charges have been reduced against a Miami man who was shot by police last month. During a court hearing on Tuesday, charges of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer and resisting arrest without violence against Donald Armstrong were reduced to a single count of misdemeanor resisting arrest. Armstrong was shot on March the 7th near the entrance of a home on Northwest 57th Street and 7th Court, holding what police said was a sharp object. Police were called to the home by Armstrong's mother for a mental health crisis. She called the police to the home. Now you're going to see the video, which I'm going to play. And here is yet another situation where another black man was gunned down. Now, there were 7 police officers that were standing out front of this home. 7 police officers. They tased him twice. On the second time, he began to lose his balance, waving not the hand with the object in it, but the opposite hand, and falling off of the porch, which was one step down. And the steps and the porches in Florida are, one step to the sidewalk. And falling over the hedges, waving his arm. One of the 7 police officers, pulled out their weapon and shot multiple times, and then shot multiple times while he was on the ground. Take a look at the video.
I think it's a very unfortunate situation. I think there are serious concerns. Of course, the community is appalled.
Pastor Gaston Smith shares his thoughts about the incident that took place Thursday afternoon on Northwest 57th Street and 7th Court.
There are definitely some tactical issues and perhaps even some policy issues with the notion of there being extra force, unnecessary force.
Pastor Smith is referring to the moment City of Miami police opened fire on one of his parishioners. He says is this man, Donald Armstrong. What you're looking at is the moments before. You can see a man has an object in his hand, and you hear police tase him twice, then fire several shots.
He has had some mental concerns, and the mother was a little bit concerned about that. But she was asking for help. She was reaching out for help. She was not asking for her son to be shot multiple times. She was reaching for help.
City of Miami Police Chief Manny Morales released this statement that reads in part, "This incident has been an event that impacted our entire community. Transparency and accountability to our community will always remain our goal. I pledge to ensure that our department does better in addressing calls involving mental and behavioral issues. I am asking all of us to pray for Mr. Armstrong and his family during this difficult time." According to the City of Miami Police, a call came in at 2:04 Thursday afternoon about a man in his 40s acting erratically. They say the officers attempted to tase him twice and say he wasn't responding, and that's when they say one officer decided to fire.
I've spoken with the chief, who has sent his concern to this mother. The mother right now is in the emergency room because she has taken ill, and the son is struggling for his life in the trauma center. We're going to get to the bottom of it, because the unfortunate thing is that this young man is struggling for his life, and we pray that he lives.
Here it is again. Donald Armstrong was shot multiple times by one of the 7 police officers who were there, even after he had fallen to the ground. So if you think that more guns is the answer, what more guns, in my view, it is the answer and the excuse for police to exact out the use of force that disproportionately will end up taking the lives of more Black men unjustifiably. Now, let me say this, because I don't want it to be certainly taken out of context, so I'm going to take my time and make sure that I put this information out there. I am a strong supporter of having law enforcement, the right type of law enforcement. There are men and women that put their lives at risk every day. Every day. They can't be guaranteed that they will not be in some serious life-threatening situation any day that they go in to report for duty. So I'm a supporter of police and the right type of policing. And I'm certainly in support of making sure that police are protected. But one of the problems that I have within policing, where the trust is broken down between the police and the citizens, is that when one member of law enforcement goes rogue, that the entire body of the brotherhood, the sisterhood, or whatever it is characterized, wrap their arms around protecting a person who has gone rogue, that has abdicated his or her oath to serve and protect, breaks down the trust between the police and the community. there is without a doubt that you are going to have police who are going to mess up. You're going to have some bad actors within police departments. You have some people who have joined the police departments so that they can exact out their power and authority through their frustration, whatever that may be, and take it out on the very people that they are supposed to be responding to, serving. To serve and protect and to defend the Constitution, the constitutional right of its citizens. There are those people who become bad actors, and they should not be protected by the rest of the police department, of those people who are going out to do their job every day, risking their life to serve and protect, to serve our community every day. Those people should not wrap their arms around people who go rogue, because what you do is you compromise the ability for the people in the community to put trust in an entire department, and you compromise that to where there is this shadow of doubt on the entire police department, when we know for a fact that that is not the case. In some way, we have to get to the point to where when police officers go rogue, when they go off the rails and they commit bad acts and they abdicate their duty to their sworn oath, that those police officers have ceased being police officers. They have abandoned and they have given up their privilege of being a police officer. And every other police officer, every other credible police officer should certainly not hold people up who are abdicating their duty and their sworn oath. Because the best policing of police officers are within its police body. The best way to do that is if the police and the rank and file hold the next one accountable, rather than locking arms with someone who goes rogue and then you want to protect them. You compromise the public's trust when you do that. So in this case, we have in Miami-Dade, Donald Armstrong, 47 years old, shot on March the 7th, who thankfully is still with us. I'm not sure what his physical conditions are. We'll get more into that and we'll bring that information to you at some point. Roger Fortson, we'll never get a chance to see what he could have done and what he could have contributed, because he was gunned down in his own home, protecting his home legally, lawfully, and he ended up dying at the hand of a law officer, of law enforcement. Pretty amazing, pretty astonishing. That this has happened. So we shall see what will become of this situation. All right, let me talk to you about some things that are happening, some things that are going on, some things that we're working on. You may have seen the two stories that I posted about Chicago's red light cameras or Chicago's speed cameras, and a statewide analysis on red light cameras, and how those two have generated more than almost $2 billion in revenue here in Illinois. The city of Chicago still is the city that has more red light cameras than any other municipality in the country. There are 19,400 different municipalities in the country, and there are 150 municipalities in the country that use speed cameras. There are 340 municipalities that use red light cameras. Out of 1,900, 400,000. Now that tells me that the largest swath of our municipalities don't believe in policing for profit, because red light cameras and speed cameras are policing for profit, period. That's all it is. Here in the city of Chicago, they have been studied ad nauseum. Wayne State University, Texas A&M, Northwestern University, and on, have proven that these are not mechanisms for safety. Because if they were, they wouldn't be generating as much money. Because if they were instruments of safety, then there would be fewer dollars generated. We have more dollars and getting and growing larger in revenue that municipalities, in particular the city of Chicago, is generating from red light cameras and speed cameras. I'm going to go through some of the statistics, some of the facts with you, but let me just get to the call of action. We are going to circulate petitions to gather signatures to take to the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson's administration. And I am asking for your help. If you believe that we should eliminate red light cameras and speed cameras, then we need your help. We need your involvement. We need your participation. So we need for you, if you want to get involved, I need you to text to the text alert. So I'm going to put it in the chat so that you can get involved to help us with this call to action, because the mayor made some promises and that he was going to work to get rid of red light cameras while he was on the campaign. Take a listen. Here's what
So,
he
Brandon
said.
Johnson, as mayor, would you consider, given the fact that a lot of these citations were written to those who live in minority communities, people of color got a lot of these tickets, would you consider returning that threshold to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, or even perhaps getting rid of a lot of these speed cameras? As mayor, would you consider that?
Yes. You know, as I indicated.
So he said that he would get rid of it. Take a
So,
listen.
Brandon Johnson, as mayor, would you consider, given the fact that a lot of these citations were written to those who live in minority communities, people of color got a lot of these tickets, would you consider returning that threshold to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, or even perhaps getting rid of a lot of these speed cameras? As mayor, would you consider that?
Yes. You know, as I.
He said that he would do it. As of May the 15th, or approaching May the 15th, will mark 1 year in office, and we have not heard anything, any way, shape, or form from Mayor Brandon Johnson as it relates to reforming red light cameras or speed cameras as he indicated that he would. And that's just one clip where he said that he would. That's just one that he said that he would do. So, Mayor Brandon Johnson, what we're going to do is we're going to gather signatures, and we're going to submit those signatures, and we're going to ask for the mayor to maintain his promise. Now, he was somewhere, I believe it was at the city club someplace, and the question was asked to him, or he asked the question, is to name one campaign promise that he hasn't kept. And this is the one campaign promise that you have not kept. You haven't done anything about. And in fact, it is the one you do something about, because you could do it by executive order with the stroke of a pen. You don't need the city council to do it because it's already in the law. That's exactly what your predecessor, Lori Lightfoot, did when she lowered the threshold to 6 miles an hour. It never went to the floor for discussion or debate because it was already in the law. So they made an administrative decision to lower the threshold from 10 miles an hour to 6 miles an hour, where we had negotiated with Rahm Emanuel, who instituted speed cameras back in 2011, that the threshold would be at 10 miles an hour for a $35 ticket, on 11 plus would be at 100 miles an hour. Mayor Brandon Johnson has the authority, with the stroke of a pen, to reverse that decision that has caused such great economic harm to those who can least afford it. He has the power and the authority to do it without debate, without a quorum. He could do it with the stroke of a pen. So we are going to develop a petition, and we're going to circulate that petition, and we want to collect 100,000 signatures to deliver to the mayor's office, asking for and demanding for the mayor to make good on his promise. Now, the Illinois Policy Institute did a statewide analysis on red light cameras. The Illinois governments have collected more than $500 million in red light camera tickets revenue from 2019 to current. And according to the Illinois Policy Institute investigation, which brings the total to more than $1.56 billion of the red light camera fines issued to Illinois drivers since 2008. They were instituted in 2003. They also did a report on speed cameras. Now, the speed cameras are on steroids. And I believe what happened with the speed cameras is that the speed cameras they have issued a ticket every 20 seconds in the city of Chicago. The Illinois Policy Institute investigation found that the city speed cameras in 2021 collected $89 million from motorists, more than doubling the revenues generated from the cameras in the previous year. In 2022, now when Mayor Lightfoot lowered the threshold from 10 miles an hour to 6 miles an hour, they issued a ticket every 11 seconds. 1,178 tickets were issued per day before March 1st. After March 1st, it was 9,014 tickets issued. In 2021, there were 2,817,554 $35 tickets, $100 fines at 11 plus, 245,331 fines per day. That was when they issued, that was from the first report. That was from the first report. This next report that they did, the speed cameras generated more than $102 million from fining drivers in 2023, slapping a motorist with a speeding ticket every 20 seconds. So there were 3 tickets issued every minute. So the bulk collections included late fees. Speed cameras collected more than $46.9 million from fines paid on time, and an additional $55.4 million from speeding tickets that included a late fee, more than doubling the cost of those tickets. Most of those tickets came from people who could least afford it. Because if you got a $35 ticket and you could not afford to pay it, if you're on a fixed income of $1,000 or $1,500 or $800 in some cases people are, a $35 ticket is not very easy for you to pay it. Unlike people who may be of upper income, who might have $3,000 or $4,000 always sitting in their checking account, and they get a red light camera ticket or a speed camera ticket, it's like a mosquito bite. They get annoyed with it, but they can afford to pay it. Person on a fixed income gets a speed camera or a red light camera ticket. They don't have the luxury of paying that annoyance right away. So it becomes a doubled fine. A $35 ticket becomes a $70 ticket. And if the $70 ticket doesn't get paid, even at a $70 ticket, then they slap on a $15 collection fee. So it becomes an $85 fee or an $85 ticket. Those were the tickets that people paid who could least afford it. The tickets that were paid on time were largely people who could afford to do it. They didn't like it anymore, than anybody else, but they could afford to do it. So what we're doing and what I'm asking you to do is, again, text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385 and get involved. We're going to be having, we do have weekly Zoom meetings every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And I send out the Zoom link on Thursdays at noon, so that you could enter the meeting Thursday nights. So I'm actually going to have because Thursday nights are our organizing nights, and we typically don't talk about issues, although we do slightly. But the real focus is to organize. So I'm going to call for a special meeting regarding the call for action as to what we're going to do. And but I'm asking for people to get involved. So we certainly need your help. If you believe that we should reform red light cameras and speed cameras, please join us. Please join us, and text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. That's 855-909-1385. Text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. That's text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. All right. So now I just want to talk about what it is that we have to do. We have so many issues. We have many issues that we have to deal with, right? We have issues that we have to deal with here in Chicago. We have issues that we have to deal with in our suburban communities, whether it be educational, whether it be economic conditions, whether it be social justice conditions. We have many of those issues that we have to contend with, and that we have to deal with. And we must deal with those issues on a collective basis. We don't have the luxury of individualism. And as you hear me say on many occasions, that it is a fallacy that all is well if I make it or if you make it. That is a suicide for any oppressed group of people, for that attitude to take. We have to develop a corporate ethnic agenda and unless we develop that corporate ethnic agenda, we will not be liberated. We will not be victorious. Now, individually, Black people have always done well, even during times of slavery. The house slaves, even though they were still slaves, had it made compared to the field slaves. They enjoyed certain privileges that the field slaves couldn't enjoy, but yet they were both slaves. We cannot afford, and we must abandon this I have mine, you get yours. We've got to abandon that. You've heard the old saying that a drop of water does not an ocean make. We have to understand the importance of an oppressed group of people, that we must unify ourselves to make the socio-geopolitical infrastructure respond to the needs for the liberation of our people. We have to engage in that. We have to organize ourselves. We have to put our team together to function just like unions do, so that we can impact the socio-political infrastructure, so that we can take command and control of our own destinies, and that people who are in political offices are functioning in the capacity that they're supposed to as public servants, not public dictators. That they don't make the determination on who our representatives are, that they don't make the determination that they get to tell us what we get and what we don't get. We are not subservient to people in public office. People in public office are subservient to the public. You are the public. We are the public. We need to stop celebritizing people who are in public office. Stop celebritizing people who are in public office. The people who we have in public office have it misconstrued. And many of us have it misconstrued. We have to reshape, and we have to have a total different mindset to approach these social, political, and social economic and social educational issues that our community is faced with. And in order to face with that, we have to have a new mindset. That means that we have to reset how we have engaged in this process. We can no longer continue doing what we've been doing and expecting that we're going to get different outcomes. We can't individually go in these different directions and silos. We have to stop latching on to people who are in public positions because of personality. We have to latch on to each other. We have to organize with each other so that we can hold the people who are in public office in these public positions accountable to delivering to the substance, not symbolism, but substance to our communities, to improve, to renew, to revive the infrastructure in our communities. And the infrastructure includes people, to bring about the kinds of investments, the kinds of industries that we need in and around our communities, that people who are at risk, people with no opportunities, will be afforded the opportunities to get and participate in the upward mobility by bringing these industries to the Southland and to Chicago. We need to support, we need to demand for the development of the South Suburban Airport. That's 90% complete. 90% of the land is acquired. We need to make sure that major multi-billion-dollar industry and investments happen in and around the Black community on the South side and the South region and on the West side and the Southwest sides of Chicago. That will create thousands upon thousands of jobs and giving opportunity to those people who are considered to be those who are at risk, those who are the high risk participants in our communities. Not to dismiss them, not to devalue them, but to help them so that they become productive and they become self-sufficient. When we have 18% unemployment of Black young men between the ages, 47% of unemployment of Black males between the ages of 18 to 25 in the same city that their white male counterparts are unemployed at 6%. That's not sustainable for a community to be a safe, thriving community. And I guarantee you, if we got to work on organizing ourselves so that we can force our public officials to deliver these kinds of investments, we are never going to make it on these one-off investments that they use as political props and as campaign paraphernalia for the next election to ensure their reelection. We must abandon individualism. We must abandon celebritizing people in public office. Now, this is not to suggest to hate or dislike anybody in public office. What we're simply saying is that we have to have, as Black people in Chicago, in Cook County, and in the state of Illinois, in places like Detroit, in places like my hometown, Richmond Heights, in places like West Perrine, places like Homestead, all of these places where I'm very familiar with, we have to organize ourselves together. You cannot and will not have power by being disorganized. Only a properly organized people, only a properly organized people will liberate its people. I don't care whether that's here in Chicago. I don't care whether it's in Cook County. I don't care whether it's in Richmond Heights. I don't care whether it's Perrine, Homestead, Goulds. I don't care if it's in Chicago. I don't care if it's in Philadelphia. I don't care if it's in New York. I don't care if it's in California. I don't care wherever we live. If we do not organize ourselves together, we will never liberate our people because we will never have power. I know that people like to think that we have power. We do not have any power. We are disorganized everywhere that we are. We are disorganized. And unless you have an intentional structure by which you organize, and I have put the structure together called 10 by 10 to win. We have put that together for us to cross-collaborate, to cross-collateralize ourselves and our wherewithal and our resources so that we could be strengthened in a unified number, that we can deal with the social political issues, whether we live in Broadview, whether we live in Oak Park, whether we live in Maywood, whether we live on the South Side, whether we live in Robbins, whether we live in Markham, Harvey, whether we live in Posen, whether we live in Robbins, whether we live in Flossmoor, Homewood, Country Club Hills, Hazel Crest, wherever it is that we live, if we come together 10 by 10 to win, that means that you get 10 people that trust you, that you know, and you get them to join the Union of Black Voters, the independent voting bloc, that we will be able to penetrate the political process and that we will be able to force the political process to respond to the needs. And so the mission of 10 by 10 to win is simply this, is to organize and unite a Black independent voting bloc throughout the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois to slate, select, and elect representatives locally, statewide, and federally from our own to self-determine and meet the needs and demands of all our communities. That is what a powerful, unified voting bloc can do, because no person in a publicly elected office, statewide, countywide, citywide, can get elected without our vote. And we need to empower ourselves to make it count, to make our vote count and make our vote be earned by making the people in the socio-political public offices respond. We can do that without even going to the first poll. If we were to organize ourselves together, we will send a message to the political construct, whether it be in our local municipalities or whether it be statewide, that there is a new day in politics as it relates to the Black community and the Black diaspora in Chicago, Cook County, and in the state of Illinois. That's what we have to be about if, in fact, we really want to see our communities revived and our communities thrive. That's what we have to do. You've got to organize the team first. You can't play in the game with a weak team and expect to win. We've got to organize ourselves. Look, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the People's Show on intellectualradio.com. Make sure that you like and share the broadcast in your social media outlets, so that we don't do this work to get paid. You know, we really don't. That's not that's not our purpose of doing this. Our purpose of doing this is to inform, to inspire, and to ignite change in and around our communities. It's not even to be opposed to anybody else. We're not opposed to white people. We're not opposed to Spanish people. We're not opposed to anybody. We're just simply saying love on Black people. We are simply saying we are pro-Black people. That's what our mission is. That's what our purpose is to make sure that our community thrives like every other community in Chicago, the county of Cook, and the state of Illinois. Thank you all so much for tuning into the broadcast, and look for our next program. Thanks a bunch. We'll see you next time.